Hi, this is Jamey Stegmeyer with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to show you 4 turns of a game of Finspan. This is a World of Wingspan game with an aquatic theme, a fish theme, where you're diving down into these waters. 3 different dive sites, also the option to play fish cards into these dive sites as you are discovering these fish and observing them and watching them grow and evolve and move around these waters that you can see here. So we're going to take 4 turns, and 1 for each dive site and 1 for showing you how to play a fish card. Let's start out with a dive site turn, and then I'll jump over to playing a fish card. So on your turn, you take one of your little diver meeples and you put it on a dive site. Or if you're playing a fish, you would put it over here. So I'm going to put this diver meeple over here on this dive site. And the first thing that you see is this brown background ability. This is an if activated ability. And specifically at the top of these sections of the board, it means if there is at least 1 fish in this zone, because the board is broken down not only into dive sites, but also zones as you go deeper and deeper. There's the daylight zone, the twilight zone, and a little off camera here, I'm going to have to pivot the camera. We have the midnight zone down below. Sorry for the shaky camera there. And so I'm going to look within this dive site and within this zone if I have at least 1 fish, and I do have a fish right here. And if I do, I get to draw a card. All cards in Finspan are drawn from the top of the deck. So I'll draw a card, I'll add it to my cards right over here. A little off camera there. There we go. And then I start moving my diver meeple down. And unlike in Wingspan, I'll probably make some comparisons to Wingspan and Finspan in this video. Unlike in Wingspan, I'm actually going to dive all the way down. So it doesn't matter that there aren't fish here. That's okay. I'll keep on going until I get to a fish. And this fish happens to have an if activated ability. And this if activated ability says, draw a card from your personal discard pile. Every player has a personal discard pile. I've put this over here for this game. I'll show you how you get cards in this pile later, but for now, I can just look through and choose any card from here. Here's a striped marlin here, and so I will choose this card and I'll add it to my hand. And then we'll keep on diving. Here, I'll leave the camera there. We get here, so this is a new zone. So there's another ability. Again, it says if there's a fish in this zone, at least 1 fish, I get to draw a card. But there's no fish in this zone, in the twilight zone, so I don't gain anything. Keep on going. Down here, it says if there's a fish in the midnight zone, this is the midnight zone down here, then I draw a card. And there is. You start the game with fish printed. Here's one, there's one up here, and there's actually one under here. There are fish printed on the board. So you have a few fish that are just kind of pre-populated in your ocean. And so there is a fish here, and so I get to draw another card from the top of the deck. Here's a mahi-mahi. And then this fish doesn't have an if activated ability. And then I get down to the bottom, and something happens at the bottom of the row here. Let me actually move the camera even more so you can see all the bottoms of the rows. So the bottom of this row says that if I haven't already placed a diver down here in this round, and you can see there's 1 diver right over here. If I haven't already dived down this dive site, then this space is open, and I get to put my diver meeple on top of it. And I gain that bonus. So I get to gain another card from my discard pile and add that back to my hand. And I put my meeple there to show that that space is blocked. If I dive in that same site later in this round, then the diver meeple ends up going in these spaces, and just in any space, any number of divers can go there. They don't gain any special bonus. So that is what a dive down that first dive site looks like. The site that's mainly designed around drawing cards. And you may have noticed along the way, there's 1 card. Well, I'll talk about this in a second when I play a card. So let's take a second turn, turn 2 here. And in turn 2, I'm going to place a diver meeple right here, and I'm going to play a card. I'd like to play this Atlantic mackerel. Now, most cards, and you can see this in my scattered hand of cards over here on the left, you keep your hand face up on the table on the left. The reason it's face up is that horizontal cards like this are a little bit hard to keep in hand. They are not secret to the other players. They are kept on the left side of the player mat. The cost of many of these cards is to simply discard a card from your hand. So on this Atlantic Mackerel, the cost to play it is to discard a card. So let's say I had this Mahi Mahi. Let's discard it. And this is where the personal discard pile matters. I'm putting it in my personal discard pile. So it's possible for me to get that card back later. So I'll discard a card, I'll pay a card, and I have to pay 2 eggs. I have to pay 2 eggs. So here's an egg token, and here's another egg token. They can come from anywhere on my ocean, from my ocean. Here's actually another one on a fish right here, but I'll choose these 2, and I discard them. I get rid of those 2. I pay those 2, and then I get to play this card. Now, many fish, like this long spine porcupine fish, they don't have any requirements other than the zone. This card must be played in the sunlight zone, but it doesn't have any requirement about the dive site it has to be placed in. But the Atlantic Mackerel does. It must be played in the twilight zone or the sunlight zone, and it must be played in this purple row right here, or this purple column, the second dive site, which is delineated from the others through this icon up here and this little border on the right. So I must play this somewhere over here. I'm gonna put it right here on top of this token, and this token sticks around. It stays in the same space. This is a young token, and that stays on that fish. So I played that card. That's the end of my turn. Some cards, as you can see, let's see, here's one right here, the long-snouted lancefish. This one had a when played ability. So when I played this, I got this ability. This card also had a special cost. It had to consume a fish. So it had to consume a smaller fish underneath it. So I had to consume a fish. You can either consume fish that are already on your player mat, so it's placed a fish card that's on your player mat, or a fish that's printed in your ocean. So I consumed a fish, and the fish that it consumes must be smaller. This is actually a universal theme of Finspan. Whenever you play a fish, you can consume another fish that's out here as long as it's smaller. So I could play this long spine porcupine fish on top of the sailfin flying fish because this is smaller or shorter, as we say in the game, than this porcupine fish. So that is playing a fish. Let's take 2 more turns, one in this dive site and one in this dive site, and they deal with some of the tokens in the game. So let's take a diver meeple and we'll put it right here. This one says, if there's a fish, at least one fish in the sunlight zone, I get to gain an egg. I can gain the egg anywhere that there isn't already an egg token, just 1 egg token per slot. And so there's no egg token, say right here. So I'll put an egg on this saddleback butterfly fish. I could have also put it here. I don't have to put it on a fish card. So I gain an egg, move down here. This is one of many all players abilities in the game. There's a lot of positive player interaction in Finspan. This says if activated, all players, and even though we have text on the card, this is also shown by this icon. This is the all players icon. All players get to hatch a young, or hatch an egg into a young. And so for any egg out here, and just for sake of example, even though it's on this card, the egg can be anywhere. So I'll use this egg down here. You get to flip it over, and it is now a young. So eggs flip over and become young. So that's this ability. This one says if activated, gain 2 eggs. So I can gain 2 eggs. Again, I can't put eggs on the same space as other eggs. That is a restriction in the game to get you to move things around, which I'll show you in a second. But I can put them on here. I'll put those eggs right here. Then I get down to this section. There is a fish in this zone and in this dive site. And so I gain another egg. I'll put this egg over here. And then finally, there's yet another fish all the way down here. And this one says, again, gain an egg. So I'll toss an egg here. Again, it doesn't have to go in that zone. I could put it anywhere. I'll put it here for sake of example. And then I get down to the bottom. And again, this is the first time that I've used this column this round. And so I get a little bonus of another egg. Again, I can put that anywhere. Yeah, so that is mostly gaining eggs, also a little bit about hatching eggs. And let's briefly go through the last column, which is primarily about hatching eggs. But there are also some other abilities I'm going to show here. So this one says, again, if there's a fish in this area, and fish, young, don't count as fish. We're looking for fish cards or printed fish called foraged fish printed on the player mat. But there is at least one here. There's actually 2 here. And so since there's at least one, I get to hatch an egg. And let's hatch this one right here. So I've hatched this into a young. There are now 2 young on this space, which will be relevant in a second. As I move past this fish, I'm going to talk about it real briefly. This is a game end ability. This says I get 3 points at the end of the game if there is a school of fish, a school on this fish. And I'll show you how to get a school in just 1 second. Keep on moving down. Get down here. This again says hatch. Let's hatch this one right here. And then here we go. Here's an all players ability. If activated, all players. And one thing I should note about all players abilities, even if I choose not to do it, all other players get the option to do it. So you can't deny other players. This is meant to be a positive mechanism in the game. You can't deny other players the ability to choose this. So even though it is an if activated ability, it actually applies to all players. All players are choosing to gain that benefit or not. So this says, I can move a school or a young as far as I want in one linear direction. And so what I'm going to do here is take this young token and move it here. Even if the young were over here, I can move it all the way in this direction using this ability. This says I can move it all the way in one line, one way or the other. And in Finspan, whenever you have 3 young on the same space, they immediately go away and are replaced by a school. And the reason you might do this is both for abilities like this one on the leafy sea dragon that says gain 3 points if I have a school on this fish. So later on, I might use this ability to move this school up here. But also at the end of the game, each egg and young token are worth 1 point. I get a 1 point per egg that I have, egg token, 1 point per young, but the schools are worth extra points. The schools are worth 6 points each. So this is a reason to not just make eggs, not just have young, but also actively move them around to have them form schools. And now I would keep on moving. I would get here, and here's an example where I don't have a fish in this zone, in the zone of this dive site. And when I get to the bottom, I've already taken an action in this dive site, and so my meeple just goes here. I don't gain any bonus. This bonus, if I didn't mention it before, is to encourage players to take a variety of dives each round. So those are 4 turns in Wingspan. I haven't gone over all the icons, all the details in the game, but that is the rough idea of what 4 turns look like. Also, I briefly showed you this mat right here. This is one side. This is the basic side for this 4-week game where you're striving to get some achievements at the end of each week. So you're going to score at the end of week 1 for every egg and every young that you have, 1 point. You're also going to score at the end of week 2, points for rows of fish, and then schools, and then you have endgame abilities and endgame points at the end of the game. But also on the reverse side here, we have tiles that you can place here to mix these up and get a variety of goals to pursue over the course of Finspan. But it's nice and easy just for a first game or even multiple games. I've played with this side many times to just put this out here. It's quicker and easier to set up and use this side. All right, that is 4 turns of Finspan. Thank you so much for being here for this. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below.